All right. Hello. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good day, depending on what part of the alleged globe you're in. You know the spiel. You know the drill. Right now, you are listening to Hangin with Who right here on mspwaves.com. Also over on the Discord and the Peace, Abundance, and Liberty server. And I believe we're streaming on Vim as well. So somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure we're doing that. So you could listen on the website, which you might get a little bit of a better audio quality. Discord is a lot of fun for chatting and emojis and sharing images and files and things. And but for audio, it can be a little shoddy depending on your connection. Most of the time, it's okay. Yes, MSP Waves fundraiser is in full effect. I don't have the details for that. I've been a little bit out of the loop. Busy doing all kinds of things all over Steemit and Discord. Heavily involved with moderating and adminning other servers, and also trying to post nearly every day of the week and host host 4 shows a week and 1 monthly as of now. So my schedule is a little bit hectic, and I'm supposed to be training to be an MSP ops, but I've been falling a little short on that, so my bad. I'm going to get on the ball, I promise. Anyway, as I said, you're listening to Hangin with Who. This is a special edition, but before I get into my special guest this evening, let me go over some announcements and some housekeeping and things like that. First of all, the usual disclaimer, as it says in the posts, and people say all over MSP, that, the opinions, ideas, and philosophies and advice and things espoused on the shows are not necessarily that of MSP Waves or the hosts or the guests or the sponsors or the audience, what have you. If you're offended, I don't really care. I'm kidding. Well, I'm not really kidding. It's not that I don't care, but this particular show, as some of you know, can go a little bit far into the proverbial rabbit hole at times, and it's not for the faint of heart or the weak stomached. That's not really the word, but it's what came to mind. So you'll notice that on the pre-show post, I used the Can of Curate tag, and there's a reason for that. So let me see. As I said before that, I was going to get into some housekeeping. So real quick, I am here each and every Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's, right now, that's 10 p.m. UTC. Although Sunday, I should remind all the other hosts and staff of MSP who are here in the audience, they've probably already been reminded a dozen times, that we're having this stupid daylight savings time again, so everything's going to change. So for me, instead of being a 4-hour difference between my Eastern Time and UTC, it will now be a 5-hour difference, and I'm sure I'll forget for a number of weeks, and it'll be a pain in the ass, as it always is. But nonetheless, I'm reminding myself and you at the same time that this Sunday we're changing the clocks here in America, and I will still technically start at my Eastern Time, but, no, I'm wrong. I will have to start an hour earlier. I'll figure it all out, and I'll put it in the posts. All right. So I'm here also on Mondays with the flu shot. Each and every Monday, as of now, it's 4 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UTC. Again, that's going to change a little bit next week. The UTC time doesn't change. It's the Eastern time that changes, and it's so god-awfully confusing. But we'll get used to it. We'll figure it out. So the flu shot, a little bit different than Hanging with Who. The flu shot is more of a kind of Steemit related couple of hours where I do some live curation, interact with Steemians and random topics and news talking points and things like that. And so that's on Mondays. And then, as I said, Hanging with Who is a little bit different because I started this show well before Steemit came around, and so I'm maintaining its original format, although let's see, this is probably my 5th episode doing it with MSP Waves, and I'm greatly appreciative and definitely love being here with you guys, especially on the Friday lineup. Definitely an honor to come after my fellow SMA peoples and to come on before my man Globo, who comes on Friday evenings with the Chaos Show. Definitely a good follow-up to Hanging with Who. So stick around afterwards for that. And I mentioned SMA, Steam It Music Association. I'm over there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern, and it's 11 p.m. Well, right now it's 11 p.m. UTC. As I said, all that's going to change, but we'll keep to the times for now. Tuesday nights, it's called Viscosity D&B, all things jungle, drum, and bass, 3 hours of just upfront, in-your-face tunes. And then Wednesdays, it's called The Roadblock. I alternate each week between house and techno or hip-hop. So this last week, if you look at my posts, I did a techno mix for Halloween, and next Wednesday will be a hip-hop mix. And they're always archived on D-Sound. My MSP shows are archived on D-Tube whenever it works, and it has been working lately. I did start using BitTube a couple of times, but I'd like to stick to D-Tube. I like to stick to the anything that's on the Steam blockchain as much as I possibly can, especially when archiving these shows. If you have any problems with the D-Tube or with the D-Sound links, if you scroll to the bottom of my posts where I give a little thanks and have banners, you'll see that I also link all of my other mainstream and centralized social media platforms. And so the music shows are also archived on Mixcloud, where if they disappear from the D-Sound links, or you have trouble playing the D-Sound links, you can then hop on over to Mixcloud, and all of the shows, and even beyond all the podcasts I've been doing, I've got probably over 150 mixes on there, all the way back to some of the old mix tapes and mix CDs that I did when I was still playing vinyl. You'll have to do some scrolling to find that. All right, so that having been said, I think I took care of most of the housekeeping. Over on SMA, I did give you guys a link earlier in the chat. You'll also find my fellows One Media, Divine, and Termite, and Claxton, and the whole crew over there on Wednesdays. No, I think it's on, God, I always get the day wrong. On Tuesdays, they do the Know What I Mean show right before mine. When we've got some newcomers, I see Armchair Spaceman. He's been fiddling about over in SMA, and he's going to be figuring out his niche over there. So definitely looking forward to that. And big up to my man Soundwaves Photon. Since there's probably a lot of musicians in the audience right now following the Spotlight on the Artist show, you should know that Soundwaves is always collecting music for the Steam Mix. And so briefly, I'll tell you, the Steam Mix is a automatic playlist that runs when the shows are not live on the air, in between shows. It's also playing on several different servers. We have it running on SMA as well when we're not on the air. Not sure who else has Steam Mix. I think Canna Curate might have Steam Mix as well. And so it's all Steamian music, exclusive Steamian music, every kind of genre you can think of. And so if you have anything you want to submit, definitely hit up my man Soundwaves right here in the chat. And he's always willing to add good music. I think he's adding stuff daily at this point. The playlist keeps growing and growing. So definitely do that. And there's my man Grim. Definitely check my man Grim out, and Ace on Intrigue, and Gregory Patrick over in Canna Curate. Canna Curate. You know what? Let me just, since I gave you a link to SMA, let me see if I can grab a link to Canna Curate real quick while I'm talking. And I see somebody messaged me over there. Boom. I was able to grab a link. Look at that, Grim. Let me see what... Okay. That's an old message. So yeah, come for all you connoisseurs, all you cannabis users, cannabis growers, lovers of cannabis for any reason, medicinal, recreational, or topical use. Check out Canna Curate. And if you make posts related to cannabis, use the cannabis tag, use the Canna Curate tag, and you will very likely get curated, at the very least get some attention, and get some Steam It love from the Canna Curate crew. So, speaking of all things cannabis, that brings me into the topic du jour. Topic du jour. I should start using that. Canalube. You know what? So, Grim, if you're not looking at the chat, and if I didn't mention, you guys might hear, I did mention in the chat, you might hear some power tools running in the background. It's just the way it's going to be for a little bit. Sorry, nothing I can really do about that. There's some construction going on, and I'm not completely soundproofed yet. So I will be making some improvements and some upgrades to the studio in the coming weeks. Things are looking up money-wise, especially thanks to Whale Shares. Posts are doing very, very well over there. And if you're on Whale Shares, hit me up because my upvote's looking really good over there, and I love to spread the love. Also, I'll tell you real quick, if you participate in SMA and come into the live streams, if I get 10 or more listeners for each show, I do giveaways of coins for Whale Shares. I do lotteries and giveaways and trivia and things. And I probably should do it while I'm on the air here, as a matter of fact. I just haven't really figured out a funky way to work that into these shows, but I probably will at some point. So, as I said, so Grim mentioned Cannalube. Yeah, I got my hands on some really cool cannabis products recently. So some of you know I live in the state of Georgia now, but that's a recent move I made after having lived in Massachusetts for a period of time. And if you're not aware, Massachusetts is one of the very, very legal states in the Union, fully legal, medicinal, and recreational. And it was an interesting experience. We're going to talk a lot about this tonight. It's a very interesting experience. My first time, I'd been to California many years ago before they fully legalized recreational. I'd never been to Colorado. And even though the federal government has had a medical cannabis program since, I think, the 60s or the 70s, it was something that a lot of us really haven't had much exposure to until very, very recent years. It's really been making a lot of headway, and a lot more states are legalizing. I think we're damn near at about half the states as far as medical use, and recreational use is definitely growing. And I think at some point the federal government's going to have to give up on this stupid war on plants, war on drugs. I always say drugs in quotation marks because, in fact, it is more so a war on your rights, your freedom, your right to self-determination, your right to self-medication, your right of consumption of any and all substances that you deem fit for yourself, your right to be a grown-up and make decisions for yourself and take responsibilities for yourself. It's also been a war on people of color. It's been a war on poor people. It was pretty much started, the war on drugs was started as a war on black people specifically, and of course has affected all people at this point. I'll certainly say that, black people have gotten the shit under the stick for a longer period of time at this, but nonetheless, it's even though race is a factor, it's pretty much a global thing at this point, and affects all poor people, and I guess it doesn't just affect poor people, but if you're well off and mostly, of Caucasian persuasions, you're going to have an easier time getting away with things under the guise of the war on drugs, that's for sure. And statistics will definitely back that up. A lot of experience will back that up as well, and observation. So living in a legal state was interesting. I moved there from a state where until recently it was highly illegal, and that's the armpit of America, known as New Jersey. Where I've been arrested a number of times throughout my adult years. I've been incarcerated for on a number of nonviolent drug charges for a period of time in several different states, actually, Maryland being one of them, New Jersey, and New York. So I've had a lot of experiences running into Johnny Law regarding substances, and one of those substances was certainly cannabis, more than once. And it's always been really strange to me, even when I was a little kid and didn't really understand and still kind of believed that, like, the government existed for a reason and there were cops, on the street to protect and serve us. And I still didn't really understand, like, why people could go to jail or, there would be, like, gang wars on the streets over plants and what I would call plant medicine. And I'm not going to limit it just to cannabis, although we're going to talk mostly about cannabis tonight. A lot of recreational substances and medicinal substances that are illicit are actually plant derived in some way, shape, or form. So it's not, even psychedelics, even highly synthesized psychedelics at some point are derived from some natural source. LSD is a fungus, comes from a fungus. Cocaine comes from a plant. It's an oil pressed from a plant. Heroin comes from poppies. That's a plant. So you say war on drugs, and as I said, it's a war on plants, it's a war on rights, it's a war on freedom. So I go from New Jersey, where you get a lot more than a slap on the wrist for a joint. Well, you did until recently, to a state like Massachusetts, where all of a sudden it wasn't necessarily a free for all. You still kind of had to be a little bit mindful of where you consumed and how much you carried, and there's a lot of these strange rules about, if you're driving with pot in the car. First of all, you have to be 21, I'm pretty sure. It has to be locked in a lockbox or in the trunk or in the glove box. They kind of treat it like guns, right? Like if you're legally allowed to drive with a gun, for instance, like I think it has to be unloaded and it has to be locked and that sort of thing. So a lot of the legal states are treating cannabis in this way as well, and that just seems completely absurd to me, because the substance poses no threat and no danger to anyone unless some idiot's consuming it and doing something stupid while consuming it, and that's not the fault of the drug, that's the fault of the idiot doing something stupid. But anyway, it was an interesting experience to me, and it was a bit of a culture shock, and it was fun to some extent, but I couldn't help think, I almost would rather it be illegal, because legalizing something doesn't mean all of a sudden that you're free to do this thing or have this thing or whatever it is, right? In this case, it's cannabis. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're just allowed to grow it and have it and consume it and sell it and trade it and, plant it and whatever it is you want to do with it. There are all kinds of regulations and limitations as to what you're allowed to do with it, right? So legalizing it just puts it into the legal realm where it's now regulated, taxed, and we're gonna talk about all this. So why am I going on and on about cannabis? So I went on a crazy tangent. Grim here mentioned Cannalube. So I got my hands on some products while living in the state of Massachusetts. I'll tell you a few things about these products before I tell you what they are and who made them, and have my so wonderful guest come on the air with me in a moment. First of all, these were cannabis products, and there were two different kinds of so a lot of you know that cannabis has a lot of different cannabinoids within the plant. And so the psychoactive substance is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, or very often known as THC. And that's when you have very high THC content in a plant, or even moderate THC content, that's when you get high from the plant, right? That's the psychoactive component that can make you high, and massive amounts of it can even have a psychedelic effect. Although I've never really gotten much of a psychedelic effect. I did OD on brownies once for my friend's birthday. I ate way too many, and that wasn't fun at all. But it won't kill you. Anyway, then there's also CBD, which is cannabidiol. CBD is one of the components that is not actually psychoactive to the extent that it makes you high. It is the part of the plant that has the relaxing properties, the analgesic properties. It's the part of the plant for that you can use for pain and anxiety and sleep, and it's becoming very, very popular in recent years. More people are becoming hip to CBD. CBD is kind of in a legal gray area. It is available in all 50 states. You can mail order it. You can actually give it to children. There's no age limit for it. My understanding is that the federal government has some. It's sort of like, as I said, it's in a legal gray area, and my guest will be able to tell you a lot more detail about this. But nonetheless, you're not going to get put away for it. The feds did raid at one point. I believe it was in the state of Florida. I read something recently where they raided a shop that was selling CBD, and when they had a press conference about it, the reporters were like, said to the police sergeant, "Are you aware that this stuff is perfectly legal? You can't get high from it?" And he was just like scratched his head and like shook his head and was like, "Huh?" Oh, I'll have to check on that. So CBD is a wonderful now. I like CBD a lot. I've used it for a number of things. I've consumed it in a number of different ways. Actually, for New Year's, when I was in Massachusetts for New Year's, I helped host a medicated dinner for New Year's, and the hors d'oeuvres were made actually by a friend of my guest today, and it was CBD medicated jams and jellies with cheese, with pieces of cheese, and we had all these fancy cheeses on a big cheese board, which I actually have the cheese board in my kitchen now. And I might have OD'd on that a little bit. I couldn't get off the floor at the end of the night, but I felt great. I felt great. I've given CBD to my kids for sleeping a handful of times. We now these products I got my hands on, the CBD products are these topical ointments and tinctures and things that my whole family has used for, as I said in the pre-show post, if you read it, we've used it for chapped lips, dry skin, cuts, burns, bruises. Well, I don't know about bruises, but pain for sure, joint pain, massages, and Grim mentioned Cannalube. Oh yeah, this stuff works wonders for the private areas, especially jock itch. Great for jock itch. And you know what? I'll say it on the air. Hemorrhoids, too. Oh, boy, does it work wonderful for hemorrhoids. So, yeah, I love this stuff. Another thing about these products that I'm going to introduce you to this evening, it's evening for me, they're made along the lines of zero waste. So if you know anything about me, you know that I'm very passionate about zero waste and moving our entire society and all industries in that direction. And so I'm always impressed when somebody has DIY homemade products that they're not selling them in single-use plastic containers and plastic bags and plastic this and plastic that and all kinds of shit that's destroying our planet so that we have absolutely no chance of having a wonderful future. So that's another thing I absolutely love about these products. My understanding is that this individual who I'm going to introduce you to is also always willing to refill the containers so that you can reuse them. So that's another aspect of zero waste. And gosh, what else can I tell you about these things? You know what? Let me shut up and let me go ahead and bring my guest on the air. I'll tell you right now. Her name is Sophia Avra, and if you didn't get a chance to check out the website, you know what? I just realized I copied and pasted a link from Cannabis, so I'm going to have to go grab the link for her website real quick before I bring her on so that while I'm talking, you guys can peruse the products. And so, Sophia, I know you're listening. I'm going to do something weird here and drag you right into the live on-air room. Hello, are you with us? Hey. All right. Hey. Before we get going, I want to make sure that the audience can hear the both of us, and you're coming through loud and clear. So if you can go ahead and maybe say hello and give us a quick introduction, and I'll interrupt you if they can't hear you.
Sure. Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Sophia. Thanks for that intro, JP. I'm stoked to be on here. I'm the founder of Avra. So as JP was saying, it's my love child of everything that's ever worked for me to help me feel better as a person. I kind of pour all of that into the remedies that I create. So I'm thrilled to hear when somebody really enjoys it and shares it with their family and their loved ones. It makes me so happy. So can
they're saying you're just a tad low, but I've turned you up, so I'm gonna let you keep going.
Okay. Shit. Hold on. Let me.
I've got you about as loud as I can go on my end.
Okay, it might be a mic error on my own. Can you hear me a little bit? No, yeah.
I mean, they do hear you. The echo. The echo would be my fault, except I've got everything That echo could be from my headphones, Ron. Ron is one of our awesome techs and part owner of MSP. Yeah, because I'm checking OBS, Ron, and I should be okay. Believe it or not, that echo could actually be coming from my headphones. All right.
All right. Well, let's see.
No,
okay,
no,
so
I don't believe so. No, I'm gonna keep playing with your voice and I wouldn't. Don't worry yourself about it one bit. So
Cool.
I guess you heard my little intro there. Super impressed with your products. I'm a little bit upset that I no longer live close enough where you can drive over to my house and drop some off. I'm definitely going to have to order some because we're running pretty low. I think the only thing I have left is one of the Rollons that you gave us. Yeah, and
lovely. Okay.
the only thing I will a small complaint is that they're hard to use in the winter because they're made of coconut oil, right?
Yes, so I actually switched up that formula. You probably got some of the first few batches. So now I use either MCT oil or sunflower oil for the roll-on. So it's not so much of a problem. And that's how pretty much a big thing with my company is that everything we make is edible.
Right.
So the body butters, the oils, everything is considered edible. Mayhaps you might not want to eat the salve as it has beeswax in it, and that's a little bit of has a laxative effect, but otherwise everything else is completely edible, which is kind of this ideal premise in anything you put on your skin, you should be able to put into your mouth. Your eats everything you put onto it. It takes it into your body, and it's really important to take as good of care as your skin as you do at what you would put into your body. So the oils are really awesome because those can be used interchangeably as an internal or external medicine. Everything's completely food grade. And so I switched over because I was having that same issue, JP, with a lot of my serums and my tincture bottles. I was using coconut oil, and we all know coconut oil solidifies. So that's been switched to sunflower.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, I'm
now.
looking forward to trying the new stuff out. That's a really great point that you bring up. That's something that I've been looking at for many years. My wife and I switched. Started transitioning to a zero waste lifestyle, which also goes into our bathroom and our health and beauty cabinets and drawers. And so we're actually at the point now where we don't even buy any mainstream products or anything that comes in plastic bottles. We'll buy something like your products that are homemade and come in glass containers, or we'll make our own. And I've had the same philosophy. I mean, anything you put on your skin, as you said, it's absorbed and assimilated into your body. It goes into your bloodstream. Particularly deodorants have been a very dangerous thing over the years with aluminums and parabens and all these things, these harmful chemicals, and they're applied into a very sensitive and very absorbent part of your body. That's one of the things I think that has been a primary cause in breast cancer for women over the last handful of decades too.
For sure. I mean, it stifles, it creates stagnation in the lymph, and I feel like that's a huge issue in women's health. Like, there's a bunch of tissue, there's a bunch of lymph in the breasts, and we haven't been taught in our society to self-massage regularly or kind of get those areas moving. And so that's a huge thing I do in any sort of women's health classes that I lead. Is I pretty much lead everybody through oil massages, and I really focus on getting the breast stimulated, just kind of getting that moving, because that's an area that has so much stagnation, and that's why I think there is this prevalence. And it doesn't help when we're adding these chemicals into those sensitive areas. I actually stopped using deodorant altogether. And some of my friends might not really enjoy it, but I find that after maybe a month or so, my body started naturally detoxing itself, and it's not like I smell super rank or anything. And I've realized, I mean, there are some really great ones with like baking soda and I'm trying to think of the other
I use tea
ingredients that
tree
they'll
oil.
throw in
I
there.
just rub a little drop of it right
Oh
on my
yeah, tea tree is
armpits.
great. Yeah, same. I mean, that's pretty much what I do too. I'll take some of my fully infused oils, and I will mix in some essential oils and use that, and I feel like it lasts a while, and it's lovely. So you can use. I think that's part of the beauty of discovering this passion in creating apothecary remedies is they're so multi-purpose, these items, and you can use them for so many things. And it's not only me, I have a lot of friends who are plant witches, and they create really cool things, and it's really fun to find different uses for oils and for
Yeah.
tinctures and for salves, and really kind of using them as a multi-purpose tool is really
Yeah, that's
exciting.
one of the things I really love about not just your products, but any products like yours. They are so interchangeable and easy to mix with other things. Like I've used some of your ointments and I've mixed them with essential oils myself, and mixed them. I've sometimes even cut them with coconut oil just to kind of stretch it out a little if I didn't need to. Yeah. So
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
it's great. You can dilute it as much or as little as you like, or just use it. So now, you mentioned the women's health classes that you lead. This is something that you and we've done a lot of talking when I was living in Massachusetts, but we didn't really get into this very much. I only knew about your vending and your products, but I knew you were into this. So if you could talk a little bit about that and tell us where you do this, when you do this, are any of your classes available online? Are there any publications?
Yeah, so I have a serious passion for sharing information. So I really work on like booking classes. I'd say probably once a month. So I'm located in South Coast, Massachusetts. I'm based out of Dartmouth, Mass, and so a lot of the classes that I teach are in person. I do a lot at local yoga studios. I teach in Providence sometimes. I really work to be in locations that work with my vibe, and it's a space that's been curated by somebody who I know is kind of on the same page as me. So I really like being in cozy spaces when I teach. It's really ideal. I don't have anything currently online, but I am working on that. That's something exciting that's to come. And pretty much my classes vary. Like something that hasn't been mentioned on air yet, I base everything on Ayurvedic medicine. So everything that I create is based on Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is traditional Indian medicine. It's the oldest system of medicine
Right.
on the planet. Like it came from the same books as yoga, which is super cool. And I really like it because it's this counterpart to yoga, in which yoga is considered this union of mind and body and spirit. But Ayurveda is like the practice of diet and lifestyle that kind of puts you into this optimal state to get into the union, if that makes sense. So I base everything on Ayurveda, and I teach a lot of classes on Ayurvedic medicine for that reason. So my women's classes are oftentimes mostly women, but sometimes we have a few brave men in the class, and a lot of the time it's self-care practices. So it's like learning specific daily routines in how to like rebalance your circadian rhythm and get yourself back to tune and back in harmony with nature. And that's kind of what Ayurveda is all about. It's about resynthesizing your body and getting yourself into a place where you're recalibrated and pretty much like getting you to your purest possible state, if that makes sense. So like Ayurvedic medicine is all about these 5 elements. And hold on one second. Are you still hearing me okay?
Yeah,
Are
we
you
are.
still
I'm
hearing me
I'm
okay?
actually working on the sound while you're speaking, but I'm listening, and the audience can hear you. So
Okay,
go on.
cool. Okay. um, so pretty much I base everything on Ayurveda, and it's this elemental theory where, the idea is that everything is made up of five elements, and every cell in the universe is made up of these elements, and the elements are ether, air. So ether is considered space, air is wind, fire, water, and earth. And I often say, like, while studying Ayurveda and applying it through health consultations or through classes or through making CBD remedies, um, it feels like alchemy, because it feels like you're working with these five elements really intimately and pulling the qualities out of the elements and learning how to balance them. So it's really quite fun, and it's really exciting, and it's this ancient wisdom that, once you start tapping into, you realize you intuitively
Right.
know so much of it. And that's the coolest part to it, and that's what I really enjoy about teaching classes. I feel like I'm sharing information that I've had the privilege and honor of downloading at this point, like in this point in my life, and I really like helping other people access that information and applying it to their daily
Yeah,
life.
I like that you mentioned how it tends to be intuitive. That's something that I've noticed over the years. I started to kind of practice a lot of holistic self-help modalities, particularly when it comes to mental health issues, and have kind of been on and off vegan, and really honing my diet to something very healthy and as natural as possible. And I noticed that with things like yoga, meditation, even EFT, which I think you and I have spoken about, emotional freedom technique, which I talk about on the show a lot. It does you do realize that it is very intuitive. There's a lot of things that we do from the time that we're born to all the way till we die that's like self-soothing. A lot of things that we don't realize that's very sort of instinctual, the way so even just getting in the fetal position, but not even that extreme, for instance with EFT. If you know about EFT, you tap on certain meridians that are used in Chinese acupuncture, but you just use your fingers and tap on them and recite certain affirmations to alleviate different emotional discomfort, addictions, and things like that. And from studying EFT, you figure out that like these are a lot of the places on your body that you naturally touch when you're nervous, when you're scared, when you're happy, when you're sad. Like when you cross your arms, or like tap. If you're like tap your feet and things like that, nervous twitches. And so yoga and meditation, EFT, and a lot of these things, as you said, I do feel is very intuitive and instinctual.
Right. And so I think that, I mean, that's so cool, and I love observing those things, like body language, and learning how to hold yourself in a certain way so you can alleviate anxiety, or get adrenaline pumping by, like, lifting your arms over your head, or just these little life hacks that kind of help you be more comfortable in your skin and be more engaged in the present moment. And another big one is, as simple as the breath and breath work and pranayama, and that's something I really enjoy sharing, and has been of great benefit for me. And I even am catching myself right now, talking quickly, like, where's the breath? Like,
Right.
return to your breath, and stay engaged with your body, and stay grounded in the moment and with what's happening. And so, a lot of us, I think, have lost the breath. I never was taught how to breathe until I sought out, until I sought out a full out holistic health counselor training. I didn't really know how to breathe properly, and it's still something I struggle with because of this
Right.
deep-seated
Sure.
patterning of anxiety that my body constantly returns to. And so, I'm retraining myself to not be at like a heightened state of anxiety at all times, and instead be in a more mellow state, like more grounded, and
Right.
slowing the vibration down through
Well, and
controllable
you know,
breath, you
I
know?
think that's one of the wonderful
Um,
things about cannabis and the different cannabinoids contained within the plant. As you probably know, humans are actually born with an endocannabinoid system, and which is activated
yes.
almost immediately after birth upon suckling the mother's nipples, the mother holding the baby, and the baby, usually the very first thing that the baby's eyes focus on usually is the mother's face, which is also another thing you learn in psychology, is that that's humans are very, very attuned to people's faces. We're very good at recognizing and remembering faces because of that. But that's for a different topic. So
Hmm.
the endocannabinoid system, it works hand in hand with oxytocin, for instance, which is an essential survival chemical. It's the chemical of trust, and some people will say love. I usually put trust above love,
Yeah.
because without trust, I mean, is there really love? Um, yeah.
Truth.
So I think it's interesting that, like, in modern mainstream society, particularly in the West, but probably all over the world at this point, or maybe it's becoming a global issue, is children are raised with very high levels of anxiety. We're raised in very a violent society. Even if you're not in a war zone, even if when I say violence, I don't just mean like, guns being shot outside your house. I mean, like, living at a heightened state of anxiety. There's violence on television. Music can very often be violent. And children being exposed
Right.
to this sort of, and not only that, but society in and of itself is very often coercive, which is a form of violence. So this raises
Yeah, for
our
sure.
cortisol levels. Cortisol being a stress hormone, a hormone that comes out in under heightened states of anxiety, and so I think it's interesting that
Hmm.
now we're relearning cannabis as medicine. I have to say relearning, because cannabis is, in fact, I'm sure you know, and you can probably speak much better about this than I can, has been around for thousands of years as a medicine.
Yeah.
So I have to say we're relearning this and rediscovering this, because it's been taken away from us and hidden from us for so long. So I think that this is one of the reasons why cannabis is making such a big comeback as medicine, because I think that people freaking need it.
Agreed. I totally agree. And I mean, I think many of us discovered that at a younger age. Like, my personal story is I I mean, I discovered cannabis when I was 17, and I had a full blown out eating
Wow.
disorder for like 4
Before
years,
discovering
and
it?
really
Okay.
before discovering it, yeah, and really, really chronic anxiety, like so much so that I missed about a third of my junior year of high school, just insane. Like, I couldn't go to school because of
Yeah.
psychosomatic feelings. Um, I had never really been exposed to holistic medicine. As a kid, I had a lot of health issues, and, they would try to pump me with steroids and
Wow.
anti-anxiety medications, and to combat like autoimmune disorders with, the steroids. And it was pretty wild. And I knew that I didn't want to keep going down that path for whatever reason. And I remember the first time I smoked weed, I just like felt so blissfully happy. And the person who I smoked with, we hung out in this like beautiful place, like my hometown, and it was late at night, and he was telling me about one of his LSD trips. And little did I know, like, that was just the beginning of my rabbit hole,
Right.
But I immediately was just like, how have I never smoked this thing before? And after like 2 weeks of smoking maybe like every other day, um I noticed this huge reduction in like my high anxiety, and also in this need to control like every little thing that went into my body, referring back to the eating disorder. And it really helped me switch this lens of understanding like what I was doing to my body and how I was really harming it. So it really angled this new perspective, and it was a super helpful medicine for me. So it's crazy because you're talking about the endocannabinoid system, and it does so much. Like, it regulates so much in our bodies. And I like how someone just shared about Terrence McKenna. Love Terrence McKenna. But it really does. It's the largest part of our nervous system, and it's crazy that we're not taught about it in school. And for me, like I've noticed, it regulates obviously mood. Like it helps maintain and balance mood, and it helps with your respiratory tract, and it helps with your digestion, and it helps with your like reproductive organs and pretty much everything. And it's wild that we have these endocannabinoid receptors all over our body, and if we're not taking in a form of cannabis and our endocannabinoid system is out of whack, then how are we rebalancing it? And there are some ways that you can still activate your endocannabinoid system without taking in cannabis or hemp. And it's like triggering the I can't say it. I can never say it. It's anandamide. It's like it means bliss. You know what I'm talking about? That receptor. It's AN. Here, I'll type it in. It's great. Yeah, it's anandamide, I believe. Receptor. And the word itself, ananda, in Sanskrit, which is the language Ayurveda is written
I'm looking it up right now while you're talking. Anandamide.
It means anandamide. Okay, there we go. It means bliss, and pretty much like you can activate this bliss hormone through smoking weed or through eating chocolate or through going on runs, going on a really long run and getting that runner's high, and through exercise and releasing endorphins. But I think it's really important to have all modalities available for triggering this bliss receptor in our body. We all deserve to feel bliss, and not enough of us do. So why limit that, So that's a huge part of like why I do what I do, and why I, work to make these remedies that I want to share with people. It's because I feel like organic, holistic medicine needs to be available on many levels. And I know a lot of other people feel that way too. And it's really cool because there's this awesome movement happening right now it's like a resurgence in plant medicine and plant wisdom and herbal medicine and using what grows around you. And it's the coolest.
Getting off the big pharma grid for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and honestly, like, there's something to be said about big pharma too. Like, sure, like, maybe some of these prescription medications have merit, and I definitely know people who have benefited from taking medications. However, there's so many effects. Like, they're not side effects, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
They're fucking direct effects. Like, it's not a side effect. It's a direct effect. And it's like, you have to be aware of that and conscious of it. And also, there is like potential for abuse and addiction on pharmaceutical drugs. So it's just like, what makes that any better than a plant? And I know, this is an age-old argument, and I'm sure many of us here have argued for this anyways, but it's just something that, deserves to be repeated, where it's like, we have, the earth provides what we need. And that's that. And going back to that too, where it's like so much, like, there's this book, it's called, oh man, what's it called? It's about, it's written by this anthropologist, it will come to me. And it's about Amazonian medicines. And basically this anthropologist, he was the first ever anthropologist to go to Peru.
Oh,
and
are we talking about Schultes? Richard Evans Schultes, because that's who comes to mind when you say that. I think he was a Harvard researcher at the time.
I think so. Let me let's see. It's like called like the serpent. Let's see. I'll figure it out. I'll find the book. I read it when I was in Peru, and I can't remember what it's called now. But pretty much, I mean, one of the biggest things I pulled from it was that he kind of went down there angry because we had the Western researchers coming in.
Yeah, no, it definitely wasn't Shulgin. I think we're talking about Richard Schultes. He was a little bit before Shulgin's time.
Alexander and Shulgin are badass, though, and P-Cal and P-Cal are amazing books. But pretty much he, writes about how the West really exploited the Amazon. They would go down there and they would have the shamans and the indigenous people show them, what do you use for headaches? What do you use for, joint pain? What do you use for skin conditions? What do you use for depression and anxiety? And, they would go down and then they would be shown, and then they would take those plants and they would come back here. And, what is it, like 70% or 80% of pharmaceutical drugs are based on plant compounds? Like, it's so crazy. And it's like remembering that and reminding people of that, where it's like you can just take the source.
One thing I learned having studied along these lines is for headaches, you can boil the bark of a willow tree, and that's a natural acetaminophen, which will not kill you. It won't destroy your liver. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. The book is called The Cosmic Serpent.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was around the same time as Schultes, who was down there. Actually, went down there originally for the military to harvest rubber for the tires on the military vehicles, and he discovered the shamans and ayahuasca and peyote and magic mushrooms originally.
It's really, the extent of plant medicine around is the coolest thing. And that going back to cannabis, the fact that it has grown pretty much everywhere in the world is pretty gnarly too, and that they've like found hemp seeds in like ancient in China, like like we're shamans in China from like 6,000 years ago, and like that Charles Darwin had hemp seeds on his boat. Like, it's like, he brought, it's crazy. So it's like, it's been used throughout history for so many different things. Is it the word sales? Oh, shoot. My brain
join
is
the club. That's all right.
Now.
You'll fit in just fine here.
Yeah. I'm like, I should take little like CBD and like clarify right now. It's been a wild month. Last month was absolutely crazy, and so I'm doing a lot of like grounding practices the next couple of days to reestablish my own like self, because I do a lot of talking about it, but the practice is way harder than just
for sure
about it. So I'm in that space right now of like rebalancing my own self-medicine. And that's another thing I really kind of talk about. It's like, just because something's worked for you in the past doesn't mean it's going to work for you again. And like dosing is everything. And it's kind of like being so self-aware and realizing what works and what doesn't. Like going back to CBD, I started really using and making CBD products because I started really struggling with THC. Which sucked. It sucked. Like, I hated that happened, and it was awful the first time I experienced kind of a bad THC experience. And it wasn't necessarily bad. It was just more so like I wanted to be by myself, and I didn't really want to be around people, and my social anxiety kind of took off. And I had never really had that happen before. And that actually happened when I got back from my trip to Peru about 1.5 years ago. And, I hadn't smoked weed in about 3 months. And I had done, a couple of ayahuasca ceremonies, and I had also taken a bunch of San Pedro, and, so I kind of had these different plant teachers in my system. And then I came back, and that first time I decided to smoke weed, it was kind of just like, whoa. Like, I felt really sensitive to it, and it kind of threw me for a loop, which I wasn't expecting. Or, I was kind of
No, I don't mean to cut you
go
off.
ahead.
It's interesting that you bring this up because that's something I've learned recently about THC. You know, I've been smoking pot recreationally since I was in my mid-teen, like probably 14, the first time I tried it, and I've had mostly a love relationship with it until recently, where where I don't want to say love hate, but I've noticed with THC, especially now with all the different strains and the different potencies, it can be hit or miss depending on the strain, depending on the environment, depending on how much you take, the dosage. There is no cookie cutter prescription for cannabis, I think, in general. And I think that's one of the reasons also why Big Pharma will have a hard time with it in the coming years, trying to patent and kind of control and regulate it.
Right. I totally agree with that. I definitely find that, like, with certain strains, like, I'm not saying I can't handle THC. Like, I still totally, smoke higher THC strains, but it's a matter of knowing when it's the right time. And I think that also just comes with this evolution of, like, a relationship with a plant. So it was kind of like the plant being like, hey, you can do this, but you need to choose the right times to do this. And so, I mean, one of the great things about living in Massachusetts is the fact that, it's gone fully rec. So, I've had my medical card for, I think, 3.5, 4 years. And now it's not really necessary because we can, freely grow. And I've really enjoyed that because I can choose which strains that I want to grow, and I can choose which ones are going to work. And it's lovely because I've been, really seeking out strains that are, a 3-to-1 CBD THC strain. So the awesome thing about CBD is when you take it in and then you also take in a dose of THC, the CBD like limits the psychoactive effects of the THC. So I love that. Like, I love that I can smoke a joint, and if I feel a little too stoned and I have to go do something, I can take like 20 milligrams of CBD tincture and it'll mellow it out. Yet make it last longer, which is really cool. So I've always said that, like, weed is kind of like this unicorn herb because, like you said, there's so many different types and strains and so many different profiles. So, like, I literally look at it as this unicorn herb, and each one is so different. And some people do better with like way higher THC, and some people do better with way higher CBD. And there's so many other cannabinoids that we're still just discovering, and it's so badass. It's just like, getting into that. And then not only the cannabinoids.
I was waiting for you to mention that. That was,
and they're great because they add like this delicious like flavoring and like the scent of like the cannabis, but they have so many other properties like myrcene, it's a super like relaxing and sedative, and as is like linalool, which is also found in lavender. So it's kind of cool. And then this kind of goes back into what I do with making these Ayurvedic products. It's like you can look at it from the basis of Ayurveda and like the simplicity of it, which is like, finding a balance in qualities of these herbs and of these medicines. But then you can take it down to this like fractal of terpenes. And it's like, this strain is high in limonene. I'm going to add some lemon verbena and lemongrass to this mix. And I'm really going to like pump up that lemon profile and let that be clarifying and stimulating and awakening to whoever takes this, So it's really, really fun. It's really fun. And the synergy between plants is like the coolest thing ever. It's really fun to see how different plants come together and like kind of make you feel and the effect that's felt. And sometimes I feel super numb to it because like I'm doing this all the time and I'm constantly like, eating different oils and doing different things. And, I either feel really attuned or like kind of, and it's really great because when I love sharing this with friends and I love sharing it with different people because one of my favorite things is feedback. And I love hearing like what somebody has experienced in their body when they've taken something that, you know, I've like put together and created. And it's the coolest thing because it also, I think, shows people how aware they are of the subtle like energy shifts in their body, you know, and that's like the beauty of plant medicine. It's a subtle medicine, and unless you're taking like a really strong dose of something, which you totally feel, oftentimes, you know, it's what much more subtle. And I think that that's a really, really beautiful thing, is to be able to tap into those like subtle details of what's happening in your universe and the universe around you.
So, all right, so I'm going to switch things up a little bit here. Let's dare I say it, let's talk some politics. Yeah, well, you and I did a little bit of catching up before the show, and I said, you know what, let's save this because this is some juicy stuff here. And I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier how I feel about having lived in a legal rec state. I'm not super thrilled with the idea of legalization. In my way would be to completely dissolve any and all legislation concerning plants and plant medicine. You would be free to consume them as you are, high fructose corn syrup and MSG. Right. But now that's not exactly the case right now. That's not the reality of it. So you mentioned that things are it gives you a little bit of a headache now, because you don't just make CBD products. You also have products available which contain THC, which obviously you can't sell. You can't do those mail order, and you actually can't even actually sell them even in Massachusetts, correct? So how does that work?
Correct. I mean, I could. I just don't have I think it's like 10 grand or something. Or they dropped it down, and I need to. I've been doing my best to stay on top of the cannabis legislation, but like currently where I stand, it's like I kind of do my thing with the THC products. People know, they know how to find me, and they know, you know, what I create and what I have available. So oftentimes it's in person, and you know, you're particular with your wording, and you're aware of this. You know, it's like, okay, I have these products available. They're available for a donation price of $50, and it's like that sort of wording. But I can't legally sell on my website, no, because I don't have the licensing, you know, as a cultivator or as a caregiver currently. And it's something I definitely have been looking into, however, haven't fully gone through with yet. I recently came into a really amazing piece of land that I'm living on, and there's a lot of potential here for, you know, really creating a like a larger scale operation when it comes to these products. And we're really like looking further into what we want to do with like state laws and like being compliant and, you know, not getting ourselves in trouble. But as of right now, I can't legally sell THC products until I get like my product manufacturing licensing totally down. There are with like CBD even, I've still kind of run into some issues, which has been pretty frustrating. You know, in an event, like in any event, like right now, the products are obviously widely available and like considered legal for the most part. But I've run into some issues, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. I basically on my website, I recently had the person who I was, or not the person, but the organization that I was using as like my e-commerce, they kind of shut me down. It was this company called Stripe, and they shut me down because they don't condone selling CBD products. And it sucked. I was just like, what the hell? And, you know, there's a few like commerce organizations that I found that are compliant with CBD laws and are okay with it. But Squarespace doesn't allow you to link in your own choice of commerce. So I kind of hit this issue, and like knock on wood, you know, hopefully won't have an issue moving forward. But currently, like the only way that you can buy products off my website is with PayPal, because typing in someone's credit card information is no longer an option. Yeah, I was pretty upset about it. It hasn't heard orders too much because like a lot of people have PayPal accounts, but what I'm worried about is, and I'm really working to not worry and not even use worry, but like, what I have to be mindful of and aware of is that, potentially could be that PayPal would also kind of freeze the operation, which is really shitty because it's like, these don't have psychoactive properties. It's an extracted cannabinoid and it's from hemp, so it's not from cannabis, so there shouldn't really be such an issue. And then so this happened a couple of months ago, and like I said, I've gotten over it and have been moving pretty smoothly since then. But recently I had my Square reader. So you're familiar with like Square, like people have like their Square readers in cafes, or like, handmade people have, their little Square reader for their phone. And I recently had my point of sale in Square freeze my account with like hundreds of dollars in it. Yeah, it's been, and this is still an unresolved issue. It's really frustrating. They pretty much shut my account down. I can't deposit into my bank account. And I've tried to contact them about 5 times now. I've sent out 5 different emails. It's been like 2.5 weeks. And they haven't contacted me back. And, so they haven't even given me a reason as to why they froze my account. They haven't sent me any emails or anything. And I'm just really annoyed with the whole situation because it would be nice to like at least have a reason, like, hey, like you're not compliant with our like regulations using Square, or and so this is like kind of why, earlier JP, I was saying, I was like, I really do need to get on some cryptocurrency ASAP because like they're shutting my shit down. And it's frustrating.
Well, Avra just asked if you accept Steam, and that's something that we spoke about earlier before the show. I've been trying to talk you into at least getting on Steam to do your posts and push your products for some time now, and definitely I think that you're a little bit more open to crypto now that you're running into these sort of issues with the commerce services out there, and I think we all saw this coming, and I think that crypto is definitely one of the solutions for this sort of issue.
So then to answer your question, Agro, like yes, I'm expecting Steam soon because I can't deal with this. Like I'm really frustrated with this like mainstream version of accepting a way to live. It's really frustrating. I have a few really big events coming up in the next couple of days, and I'm kind of just like, shit, like I don't even know, I'm a bunch of yoga moms tomorrow, and they're gonna have their credit cards, and I'm gonna be like, yeah, I don't know what to tell you, like either write me a check or give me cash, or like
well, yeah, Venmo. I was gonna ask if you could do Venmo. Like, there's a couple other apps out there.
Yeah, I use Venmo pretty often, and that's a big way that I utilize the THC products. But it's just that's kind of been a little bit of a challenge for sure. So it seems like this is good timing for this conversation, JP. If you get on that, because I literally am just like, I have like a few $100s just frozen there, and I have an expensive rent to pay, and like it's not fair. Like it's not fair to be shut down for doing something that really isn't hurting anyone. And it goes back to what you're saying at the beginning of this whole thing. It's just like shit. Like it really sucks when people are censored for doing what they love and for and I mean, I'm grateful. I could have run into way more problems in my life, but I'm like a white female, and I've definitely run into some issues. But had I been someone else, of a minority or someone of color, like I
Sure.
probably would be in a lot more trouble than I am. And it's kind of wild to think about that, where it's just like, damn, I'm really privileged to even be doing this, and kind of be doing it in the open, and not scared of being incarnated because of like how I
Yeah.
look or who I am.
Let's talk a little bit about this whole living in a legal state, and you mentioned that it's sounds like it's a bit pricey to get the right kind of licensure to be able to legally go about distributing THC containing products. I mean, I had some experience because, as some of the audience knows, I was helping to run a small cannabis farm and retail location. We weren't actually looking to do retail on the cannabis, but we had looked into a lot of licensing, and we had some people, some financial backers, and people were ready to go. And we were looking at probably several tens of thousands of dollars. You mentioned about 10 grand. I think that they did recently lower it, but that doesn't even seem like a very realistic number for just anyone to get into the industry. I mean, not just anybody has that kind of money laying around or that kind of credit. How has that hindered you or people that you know in general to getting into the cannabis industry in Massachusetts?
I mean, that's exactly it. It's like, I'm a small company, I'm a small business owner. I've had people offer to kind of like provide me, like back me in a sense, but oftentimes the people who have offered to back me have their own, like, have some self-interest in mind, and have companies they're looking to promote, and so I haven't really like signed up with anyone. I'm like very much, it's exactly what you just said. I mean, it's just I feel hindered sometimes by the financial aspect of things, but at the same time, like, know that like if I'm meant to kind of go further with this, and that opportunity will present itself, and like the right person will come along, that I'm like, yeah, I'll gladly sign up for this with you, and like if you want to back me, I would really appreciate that. It just hasn't happened yet with the right person. So it's kind of like, it's hard for anyone looking to really build a company in general, and then is something that's considered, or has been considered a Schedule 1 drug. It's just like kind of ridiculous. So money it's an interesting thing, and I mean, going back to meditation and the whole mindset aspect of things, like I'm constantly shifting my mindset with when it comes to money, from like a lack mindset to abundance mindset, and knowing like there's so much money out there, and why wouldn't I have access to it? So like I'm definitely working on constantly putting it out there that I believe that I deserve to have money to back a full cannabis operation. It's in the works. It's like one of those in the works projects that I can see coming soon, and with it, and it's just like believing that that's going to happen is a big part of it, and just working really hard towards the goal, but not stressing about it, and like it also comes down to like, I've worked at cannabis shows, and I've like vended at them, and a lot of the time, I see these companies that are much bigger than I am, and doing a lot, and they're like wholesaling all over the place, and they're doing it, and it comes down to that. It's like, okay, they have a lot of money, and that's what it comes down to. But it's like, it doesn't. A big thing I've learned through all of that is to not compare. Don't compare yourself to anyone else, and like don't compare what you're doing to anyone else's path, because like ultimately, when it comes down to medicine or music or art or whatever you do, like your medicine
right.
is
That's a good
different than someone
attitude.
else's, you know? And yeah, for sure. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, if it's meant to happen, it will. And I feel really content with where I'm at, and I'm grateful at the legality of CBD. And you know that I really haven't run into too many issues aside from like the bullshit of them shutting my money
That
down.
is bullshit.
It's such bullshit. I'm just like, can you at least just like tell me that I can't use my square
let the
reader
money
anymore?
go.
Because like that's all I'm waiting on. You know, like give me maybe like the $400 or $500 sitting in my account, and like, you know, I would be pretty happy about that. But you know, in the big scheme of like the larger vision of things, it's really not a big deal, and you always find a way around things. It's just like accepting it and moving on from it.
Well, and in regards to like comparing your path to other people's, and like I've seen you vending at events where, you know, you're up against these big time vendors who are, you know, not just growing cannabis, but they're like developing technology and all kinds of things. Very, you know, like what I see is that you're doing what you do for something, a greater purpose than to make money, you know. And I think that very often when you're into something as passionate as you are, the money comes with the territory, as opposed to other people I've seen where, sure, they might be passionate about cannabis on some levels, but they're ultimately doing it for the money. They're ultimately looking to profit, and they have no other, you know, real interest other than profiting. Otherwise, you know, they wouldn't be doing it to the extent that they're doing it. So I think there's something to be said for that, and I think that that's why you are successful to a great extent. You're successful in your lane. I haven't seen anybody do quite what you do the way you do it. Definitely very impressive. I mean, aren't you a one-woman operation? Am I wrong about that?
I mean, for the most part, I am. I have some really awesome friends, and like, you know, my fam is strong, you know, and so like I definitely, for bigger events, and like I worked at a lot of festivals this summer, and that was really dope. So that, you know, takes a lot of work to kind of prepare and have everything ready. And I mean, like for the most part, I am like a one-woman operation for sure. Like I do a lot of gardening, and a lot of the herbs used in my products are homegrown. So, you know, it's like growing the herbs, harvesting them, drying them in oil, like straining the oils, and then making them into these things that I create. And you know, oftentimes I'll have friends like come help me harvest, or I'll have them, you know, in the kitchen with me making stuff. The real thing I like usually ask for help on is labeling. Like I really don't like labeling. I'm not like a super meticulous, detail oriented person, like in every aspect of my life. Like I like nice looking aesthetics, and like, but like, you know, if you come to my apartment, which is absolutely beautiful, but like if you were to see my apartment, you know, you might see some paintings that are a little crooked on the walls.
That's
like,
okay.
I don't exactly. And so like labeling is like not my favorite thing. So I'll have label parties. Yeah, and it's really fun, and I'll just be like, you know, come through, and like we'll listen to some really good music, and you know, we'll have some good conversations, we'll smoke some good weed, we'll drink some wine if we want, and like, you know, we'll label up like 500 jars of
that's when you need your friends that are OCD.
And that's when I call in like super detail oriented OCD friends who are like, oh my god, this one is like a quarter of an inch too high, like should I relabel it? And I'm like, dude, honestly, like I don't care. But like they and that's the other thing, like I'm so blessed because I have people in my life who genuinely support what I'm doing, and they really like appreciate my work, and it's so cool like in those situations where they're like, so we want your stuff to look like as good as it possibly can because like it deserves to, you know. And like it's so heartwarming to have people around you like that just like really support what you're doing. And I haven't, the like only times I've really paid anyone is like if people come help me vend at events. But for the most part, I just like throw them like whatever products they want. You know, it's just like, yeah, take like a body butter, or like take a giant jar of tincture, like do whatever you want, you know. And like, once again, just grateful to be able to share that with people, and kind of know that they're putting something in their bodies that has a lot of intention in it, and a lot of
I can second that. I can definitely vouch for that. Having been a user of your products and a big time supporter, I back them up wholeheartedly. And I can tell you 100% that they work for damn near anything, as I said earlier on in the show. Even your private areas, all kinds of internally and externally.
Yeah, dude, I love that you mentioned the lube, because it's just like, honestly, I've made around, like, you know, in the winter, like when everyone's just like getting like warm and toasty with one another, and like, you know,
it's a family show. I'm kidding.
Like,
go ahead.
You know, you need. Well, no, it's just like, first of all, the winter is like a point in time when your body just needs more oil anyway, because like the winter is dry and it's cold, and the winds are rough, and they like, it just is this rough, dry time of year. Like, our skin cracks, and like, you know, our lips are cracking, and we need to take in more like higher fat things. And so oil in general for your body is great, especially in the wintertime. And then like using like cannabis lube or like cannabis oil to kind of just like get yourself like in the mood is freaking amazing. Like, it's so magical. And like a lot of the herbs that I infuse in my products are aphrodisiacs. Like, I use ashwagandha a lot, which is a really, really great herb. It helps balance out sex hormones.
Send me like 5 of those.
I use strawberry. Yeah, it's like, it's great. I mean, ashwagandha meets the strength of a horse.
Wow, I'll need 10 of those.
So it literally, it gives you this like, it gives you the strength of a horse. Enough said. And it's like super synergistic with cannabis. I find it's like a really, really nice herb to blend with cannabis. So I use that in a lot of my remedies, and I had the pleasure of growing an entire bed of ashwagandha this summer. Yeah, it was like the coolest thing to dig up those roots and kind of see how they grew all summer. So a lot of homegrown organic ashwagandha in my products. And yeah, there's like some other really great herbs that, you know, I'm making a formula right now that I haven't really released or shared yet, but it's a cacao formula. So I'm using like fair trade, like organic cacao. And I'm really stoked on that. And I've used cacao before in like specifically these like CBD lubes and aphrodisiacs, because it's another like, it's heart opening, and it like has this really beautiful effect on your body. So it's just a matter of like the intention that's put into like when you use something, and then like kind of just letting it have the effect on your body that it needs, you know. I know a lot of women who like really struggle with like really relaxing during sex, and I think that's another thing that is great about using like a cannabis lube, because it like really relaxes you. Like, it relaxes your entire body, and like you're getting yourself high, like in all the ways, you know. I really enjoy making that stuff. I think it's a really positive. It's good to be sex positive, and you know, we need more of that in our society. And everyone has sex.
Damn near, I would think.
So it's like, yeah, you know, and everybody just to enjoy sex, and like having tools to kind of help you with that, I think is really good.
Do you talk about that in the classes, the women's health classes?
It comes up sometimes. I definitely want to start focusing more on like, you know, talking about sex. And one of my favorite classes that, you know, we've been doing a lot of, it's called Anahata Ganja. Yeah, so Anahata, it means it's the heart chakra. So it's, you know, your chakras are these spinning vortexes of energy in your body, and Anahata chakra is the green. It's considered the rainbow chakra. It's the chakra that's in the middle of all the other chakras, and it's where your heart is located. So we call it Anahata Ganja, and it's basically a cannabis-infused yoga class, meditation, and kind of like a community powwow. So I like tend to start that class. I lead it. I usually have a discussion point for the group. We like all introduce ourselves and then we kind of get into it. So we've gone everywhere in that class, from cannabinoid system to talking about like terpenes and cannabinoids, like we kind of were just talking about, to talking about the stigma of cannabis and how we've had to overcome it in our years and like what that's looked like for us. Our favorite ways to take in cannabis, like one of my classes, we talked about like dabbing, and a lot of people had never taken a dab before, and so it was just like, all right, well, definitely bring like,
oh boy, first dab hit, woo!
just to show people what it's like, and I told them in that too, I was like, we'll bring some great oil, but I'll bring some CBD isolate with me too, in case you get too stoned. So it's great. So like this class Anahata Ganja is definitely a class in the next one that I was actually thinking about, one of the talking points being on sex and being on like, how do you feel about your sex life, and how do you feel about like the pleasure you receive, and like, how connected are you to that experience? In one of the like yogi practices is called brahmacharya. It's one of the moral restraints in yoga. So it's kind of like they're called the yamas and niyamas, and they're kind of like the yogi 10 commandments, if you will. And they're basically like the guidelines on how to be like a good person. And one of them is called brahmacharya, and it means energy conservation. And so, like, this energy conservation, this brahmacharya, often refers to sex, and it's like to, not having sex unless it's with a very like high vibration purpose. And it's definitely been something like I've dabbled in, where I'm just like, I am not available sexually right now. Gone for anywhere from like a couple weeks to a few months, and then like returning back to having sex and being like having loving partners, and like having sex with intention and making it really potent and powerful and beautiful. And I love having these additional tools to make it like that much more potent. There's something really beautiful about all. So yeah, I definitely, I haven't gotten, but I definitely want to open the discussion up. And I mean, a big thing with the classes that I lead is I kind of like do them seminar style. I want people to be able to share, and like I want it to be a safe space where people can talk about what they need to talk about and say what they need to say. So like I'm excited for when that comes up, and I can't wait to what people have to share around their sex life and whether or not they still
almost always before and after. Real quick before we get to the last handful of minutes of the show, and I do want to see if we can showcase a couple of your products. We'll talk about offering a discount and whatnot. Sure. Let's go a little bit for a few minutes to the polar opposite end of the spectrum, if you can speak on this. How do people tend to feel about using CBD products with their children, or letting their children use these products? I mentioned earlier that my wife and I we have given our children CBD internally and externally. They've used your products and some others that we've gotten our hands on.
That's amazing. So yeah, I personally feel children should definitely if they need a natural remedy to help with whatever they may be going through, that CBD is an excellent tool, because you don't get high from it. Like, it's not going to alter them. It'll relax their bodies, and it'll rebalance their endocannabinoid systems. It's funny that you mention this, because I'm vending at this event, and it's pretty much a yoga open house, and the woman who's running it was a little bit to have me there like earlier in the day because they are they have a kids yoga class, and she was afraid that like the mom would get upset about there being a CBD company around their kids. And I quickly explained to her how there's no need to fear. I was just like, it's non-toxic. It's like sugar is worse for kids, and like you feed your kids these like stimulants, and you feed them drugs all day, and you don't even realize it. This has like this plethora of positive effects on the body, and it's going to help rebalance whatever's going on with your kid. And that's pretty much all it's going to do. It might make them a little sleepy.
That's not a bad thing.
and that's, yeah, exactly. And so I ended up convincing her to let me still like go at an early time, because I told her like one of my biggest goals is to educate parents, and I want parents to be aware of the fact that they have this option of something more holistic and natural to give their kids if and when they run into problems. And so many kids nowadays have health issues because of genetic imprinting, and like because of our shitty diets. Like we then have kids, and like they are born with these disorders, and like you were saying, like anxiety. We live in a really, really stimulating society. Like you're constantly on a screen, or like you're constantly being
overly stimulated
something, and like it's really hard to slow down. Way overly stimulated, and that's why so many people have sleep issues. And I know so many kids who have digestive problems, and they have all these crazy allergies, and like skin rashes and discomfort. And like going back to what I was saying, like I had a really bad skin condition when I was a kid. Wish that there were CBD topicals available, so I didn't like go through using like 10 years of
I can't imagine. I've
skin.
used that sort of stuff too for blemishes and burns and things, and it's terrible.
Yeah, it is. So it's like I would way rather parents know that there's an option to treat things naturally, and that it's not going to affect their kid in any negative way, So yeah, I totally am a huge proponent of kids using CBD, as long as it's like, responsibly sourced, and that's how I feel about anyone using it. Like, sourced from a quality grower. Just know where you're getting your stuff from, and like do a little bit of research. And like I don't think there's any issue with kids using it. I mean, people use some of my turmeric, my tejas oil. They use it on their pets. Like they give it to their dogs. It's like a turmeric, ginger, black pepper.
I think I tried that.
And, it's worked wonders. Yeah, that one's badass. It's helped like for so many different things. It's like it's so cool to hear the spectrum of ailments that's kind of aided people with and their pets. It's awesome. So it's just kind of like one of those things where I want these things to be available to everyone. It's kind of funny because, a lot of the time people are like, well, what's your target? Like, if they're trying to give you like marketing or like business plans, they're like, oh, well, what's your target audience? And I'm just like,
the world?
I don't know. Like my target audience, it's anyone and everyone who is open to trying something that they haven't tried before, as somebody who like is seeking a better way of being. And that's my target audience. Like it's not, like middle-aged women like who are like widows and like lonely or whatever. It's like that's not my shtick. It's kind of just like my whole goal is to kind of get this out to whoever needs it, and kind of really to get this information out there. Like ultimately, I think the products I make are super high quality, because I know where most of everything comes from. And, I'm aware of like I'm aware of like the intention and the energy that, I don't think I'm going to be making these products forever. Ideally, down the road, I'll be sharing like this company with others, and you know, we'll take it from there. But ultimately, what I really want to do is kind of teach people how to
Okay.
make their own stuff, you know, and because like it's not sustainable for me to make products for the rest of my life. Like I'll probably be doing it for myself, but to like, you know, take like days to, like I was saying, you know, make the products and do all the oil infusions, and then like those label parties and all of that, like it takes time, and it's time I really love investing currently, but I don't think I'm going to invest it forever. So yeah, it's so like ultimately, you know, my goal is really teaching people how to do these things themselves, and that's kind of my goal with everything. Like all the knowledge that I've had, like I've accumulated over the years and will continue to learn. I'm constantly learning, and I'm so stoked on that. I that's what I want to, you know, I want people to kind of learn how to help themselves, because ultimately I'm not your healer. Like, and I tell people that I am not your healer. Like, I am here to hold space for you while you learn how
which
to
is
heal
really
yourself.
ultimately what the definition of a guru is. Most proper gurus will say the same thing. Yeah, I love that as an ultimate goal. I think that is a very sustainable business plan, is to ultimately share the wealth of knowledge and skill that you have, so that people can do for themselves. So in terms of sourcing, you know, I'm guessing that you're pretty transparent. You're always willing to share like where your where all the ingredients come from, and whether or not they're organic and genetically modified and such.
Yeah, for sure. I if I ever buy any herbs, like if I ever have to order herbs because I'm short on them or whatever, it's always from like an organic source. I was using Mountain Rose herbs for a while, which is cool. You know, like they have some good quality products for sure. You know, they market everything as being organic. I recently switched over to a more local herbal company that's based out of Vermont. And I don't know why this keeps happening to my brain today, but I keep freezing on names. So that will come back to me. But for the most part, like I haven't had to order anything, like any herbs, since last winter, because I spent a lot of time cultivating a garden this summer, and I know for a fact that all the ingredients I'm using are organic because I don't use any chemicals. So, you know, I source from myself, and then I source from, you know, like there's a farm around me. It's called Eva's. It's literally called Eva's Organic Herbs. It's Eva's Garden, and it's so magical. So, you know, I worked there for a summer, and I'm well aware how sacred their practices are. So it's really just a matter of like knowing that sourcing. And then when it comes to the CBD that I use, I kind of switch. I have a source in Maine that I am really stoked to be getting some of their harvest from this year very soon. And they're called Atlantic Canna Farms, and they're based out of Maine, like I said, and you know they are all organic growers. They have a pretty big organic hemp operation, and so that's where that sourcing is coming from currently. I've definitely sourced from a friend who has a pretty large grow up out in Colorado, and that was kind of what I started sourcing my CBD from. But ideally, you know, where another thing that's been talked about quite often in my area is kind of getting a giant organic hemp growth happening here. So we're kind of trying to put together a team for that, and kind of like, once again, it goes back to that funding and, you know, finding people who are in it for the right reasons, and like, you know, let's do this right. So yeah, I work to source like pretty much exclusively from my backyard, but like that's only can take you so far. So, you know, I have some other great farms and companies that I work with, and I know that their products are great. And then so that's like the herbal component of it. And then my base oils, I mean, so another thing that we've been looking into is sunflower oil and kind of like pressing our own sunflower oil. But that's another very large scale operation. So right now I get most of my base oils from this company called Banyan Botanicals, and they're an Ayurvedic company, and they use organic, sustainably sourced oils. So I order from them pretty frequently. They're the best quality oils I've personally found so far, and so I use that. And I would highly suggest, if like you need base oils for any reason, to order them from there. They're pretty awesome. So yeah, I do that. And then I mean, I use local beeswax. I have quite a few friends who are beekeepers, and we do some nice trades for honey and beeswax. I get like pretty much all the honeycomb for CBD products. It works out really nicely. So local beeswax, local herbs.
Yeah. So do the products that contain beeswax, do you have some hardcore vegan customers that will not consume them? Yeah.
I've had that happen to me a couple of times, and in those situations, like I either will offer them. I've made some with carnauba wax, which is considered vegan because it's from a
even though it's a living creature.
It is. So I've definitely made things that are salves that are like vegan friendly. But I mean, for the most part, like if I haven't really had anyone who's like, I won't use this because I'm a vegan and it has beeswax. They'll just ask me if I have, something else. And ultimately, like, that's why I have straight up base oils and oils that you can use. Like that doesn't have any butter or wax in it. It's just oil. And then, I make the body butters, which don't have any beeswax in them either. They're like usually cacao butter, and I use mango butter. And so mango is one of those things that like it actually, when you take in any, like say you drink some mango juice and then you smoke a blunt, like there's myrcene in mangoes, and so that actually helps your body. It makes the cannabis more bioavailable. So I figured, using mango butter in my products would, also kind of amplify that. So one of the products on my website right now, it's called the Wildflower Body Butter, that has some traces of it in there, and it's absolutely delicious. And it's like, I mean, it's actually delicious.
Right, as edible. All your products are.
But yeah, so that's like a great one. And I'll point people who have any issues.
Yeah, I learned that about mango only recently, and as I said, I've been smoking pot or ingesting cannabis in one way, shape, or form since I was about 14, and it just so happens mango is my favorite fruit. I can't get enough of them. So, yeah.
Oh, awesome.
All right. Yeah, I'm intuitive, as we said earlier.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
This is the part of the show where first I'm going to ask the audience if they have any Q&A to go ahead and start typing away. And while they're doing that, I want to see if we can do a little bit of showcasing. I've shared the link to your website, which I'll do again. And so you can tell us, for instance, if all of your products are available, obviously not the THC products for mail order. But if you want to maybe pick like your number one favorite product that you use yourself, maybe one or two more that you want to showcase specifically. And I think that we might be offering an MSP discount.
Yes. So we're definitely doing an MSP discount. Thanks for listening, guys. Appreciate it. It's the code for it is just MSP Waves. It's super simple, and it's 10%
very nice.
off
Thank you for
purchase. So yeah, of course. And I mean, in general, I like really try to keep my prices as fair as possible because I want this stuff to be available to people. I like always base everything off like that concept where it's like if it's not accessible to the poor, then it's neither like radical or revolutionary. Like there's no if everybody can't access like these
Ooh,
things,
I'm
then
gonna
what's the
quote
point,
that.
you know? Yeah, it's and that's not my original idea. It's definitely a quote that I quoted from someone else. But I mean it's so on point. It's like if it's not accessible to everybody, then
Yeah.
why do it? So especially if you're saying, you know, you're helping people, like then it's like, or like you're working to
Right.
help people, then what's the point? So yeah, anyway, so I keep my prices as fair as possible. These products tend to last a while. I mean, the tinctures will go quicker if you're using them every day. You know, like a 1 ounce bottle of tincture has about 30 dropperfuls, so that's like a month's supply if you do one
That's good.
dropperful a day. I admittedly have days where I'll take like 3 dropperfuls because I'm stressed out and I'm not feeling it and I want, you know, something to help. But then I have other days where I don't take any. So give or take, a bottle will last you a month. And yeah, I mean, I'll gladly showcase some products. Should I just kind of like go for it? Talk about
pick your favorite one. Yeah, we did have one question from Agro. He was curious if you had a physical location. I can partially answer that you do a lot of vending. He lives in Boston, so I think he's curious to meet up with you and pick up some products.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't currently have my own physical shop. I'm avoiding brick and mortar for as long as possible because I'm like a total free spirit and I don't want to be bound down to anything. Which is why I don't even have a dog. But I definitely like I wholesale to a bunch of different places. Some of my stockists are on my website. You can like check it out at the bottom. You know, I have a couple places in Providence, in New York, and yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I don't have as many listed as I have. So I mean, you can totally reach out to me and contact me. JP answered that question as far as I do vend quite often. So like, you know, I'd say at least once a week I'm at an event, and you know, you can come meet me in person. I love talking to people, and it's kind of a good way to test stuff out too. So right now it goes back to that being kind of like a one-man operation. But I'm, especially with like the holidays coming up, pop-up shops and stuff that are going to be happening, and I'll be putting those, say, ASAP. I also do a lot of online like present stuff. So like if you guys are on Instagram, any of that stuff, like see really what I'm up to, like kind of live, because I'm constantly posting on there. So I use that as a good platform for getting out there. And on Instagram, it's just at Avra. So you can just find me on there and, you know, what I'm up to. So, and yeah, I'm working on figuring out a base shop to always have my stuff in. But right now, you know, I have a few good wholesale accounts I really dig. So that's always good. But online orders are a great way to do it too. And I mean, the only thing is you can't test the product that way, but you know,
I've tested them out. I'll vouch. Yeah. I think I have some credibility.
And I mean, that goes back to my IG too. Like, if Instagram's a thing you do, you know, there's this cool little feature on it with stories. Yeah. You can make like a highlights reel. And I have on my highlights reel, I have like kind of like a testimonial thing. It's called feedback, and you can go look at the feedback aspect of it. And you know, oftentimes it's just like text messages or like things people have sent me that are like, hey, like this is awesome, it worked for this, you know, or like this helped me sleep, or you know, my knees don't hurt anymore, whatever it might be. So I kind of keep like a live feedback stream on there. So if you want to go check out like what people have used,
I'm going to jump the gun a little bit. I was looking at the website, and this is the one that I've used more than anything. I've gone through a couple or a few jars of this. I'm going to go ahead and place the link in there. The Tejas Balm. Oh,
Oh, the
I
Tejas,
absolutely
yes.
swear by this stuff for any and everything. My favorite testimonial is I got almost a third-degree burn on the tip of my finger one day playing with I was working on a fire, and I had to stick my pokey stick, and it got really hot on the end. I didn't realize it. I touched it, burned the living hell out of the tip of my finger. I put that stuff, just a little dollop of that stuff on my finger, and this was probably about 6 p.m. in the evening. By the time I went to bed, I forgot all about this burn. By the next morning, it was gone completely. I swear on everything holy.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I mean, and that makes sense because it has, not only does it have like CBD in it, and some batches are made with full spectrum hemp oil, some are made with CBD isolate. It's really dependent on what I have more in stock. But it's not just the CBD; it's like the turmeric and the ginger and the base butters of like the cacao butter and the coconut oil and the mango butter, and those are all super cooling and anti-inflammatory. So that is awesome to hear,
Yeah.
JP, that happened. Not that you burned your finger.
Yeah,
but
well,
that it helped,
had I not done that, I wouldn't be able to vouch so hardcore for this product. But I use it for a lot of things. I put it on my lips, my face, my kneecaps. My wife and I have used it for back massages. It's amazing stuff.
Yeah, I've had a lot of people who have any sort of arthritic problems really benefit from the Tejas Balm. Going off of the Tejas Balm, I actually have the Tejas oil as well, and
Okay.
I'll send a link to that. This is probably one of the best-selling products that I have alongside the Tejas Balm, because it's basically the balm, just the straight oil. So it's MCT oil infused with turmeric root, ginger root, pipali, which is Ayurvedic long pepper. So that has a high piperine count, and you need piperine in order to make the curcumin and turmeric bioavailable. So it's like this really cool synergy. That's why, if you take turmeric capsules, oftentimes they have black pepper in them. It's because black pepper activates it in your body. So I use piperine and black pepper, so it's spicy sometimes. And then some rosemary, and this particular batch that I have right now uses CBD isolate. And I personally love this stuff, and this is definitely one of my best sellers. It's helped people who have like Crohn's disease, any sort of digestive issues. You can use it like topically, like for any sort of inflammation, kind of moving stagnation in the lymph. It really it detoxifies the skin. It's great for eczema, psoriasis, any sort of those issues. And then internally, awesome for systemic inflammation. It's been really helpful managing anxiety in general. Like there's something really uplifting about this formula. It's uplifting, but yet grounding. So this is definitely one of the best selling. I think it's really potent because of all the anti-inflammatory benefits, and a lot of disease comes from inflammation. So that's that. So that one's really good. And then I want to talk about one more, just because
I have one question real quick. Do you have one that you would recommend for reflux? Yeah.
For acid reflux, I would say the Be Kind oil, because it's acid reflux is really fiery, and so the Be Kind oil is super cooling. It's in sunflower oil, and it has like a couple of different types of mint in it. Amalaki, which is an Ayurvedic herb that's really great for cooling down, for cooling down our internal fire if it's too strong. Lavender, a little bit of eucalyptus, and a little bit of sage. So it's a nice cooling minty blend. And that one's definitely helpful for something like acid reflux, and it's also helpful really severe migraines and headaches. I've had a lot of feedback with using the Be Kind oil for any sort of tension in our heads. And it's great for, once again, any skin rashes or things that are pretty heating and inflammatory. But yeah, I'd say the
all right, and then you had one more,
sure.
and I think we'll call it a day with that one, and we'll get on with the end of the show.
Yeah, the last one is the Vata oil. And so in Ayurveda, Vata is this concept of, it's this energy that resides in our body that is made up of the elements wind and space. So going back to this elemental theory. So if you have a lot of wind and space in you, you're pretty untethered. You know, you're ungrounded because you're like probably really breezy, and like wind can be a breeze or it can be a hurricane, you know? So it looks like it can, if you have too much of this wind and space energy, it can look like anxiety, it can look like ADHD, it can look like not being able to sleep, it can look like constipation, it can look like all of these things that are, you know, drying you out and making you feel spacey and ungrounded. And so the Vata oil kind of and the Vata Sav are kind of like my winter remedies for people, and they're made with sesame oil and very, very like hearty grounding herbs like ashwagandha root, which we talked about a little bit earlier, calamus root, tulsi, lavender, and you know, sometimes I'll sprinkle in a couple of other like little herbs that kind of balance and ground things out. So I just wanted to take note
give
of
us
that
a link.
one.
If I don't think you gave us a link for that one, and then and then I'm going to jump real quick to my man John's question. John is one of the people who runs the Cannabis server, which is a group on Steemit that's strictly cannabis related, all things cannabis. Which I think once you get in, if you decide to get involved with Steemit, which I think you should, and we all hope you do, that's going to be a great launching point for you, a great place for you to get active and really get some exposure. So he wanted to know if you had any products in the Monterey Bay area. I'm guessing you probably don't. However, this may be a good way to get some products out there.
Yeah, hell yeah. I currently do not, but I'm open to it for
well,
sure.
After the show, we'll talk. We'll get everybody connected and we'll figure things out.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, that's definitely, you know, it's like I was saying earlier, it's kind of getting these things in the right hands and with people who they can genuinely enjoy them. So wherever I can get it is great.
Awesome.
For sure.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, that just about does it. That brings us to the last few minutes. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've given us so much more than I anticipated. We've went in so many directions here. Who would have thought that showcasing some CBD products would bring so many issues up and so much knowledge, just so much. You need to write a book.
It's kind of funny. I just met a new future mentor, and that's exactly what we're
great.
On. So
that's something to look forward to for sure. Well, I'm going to bid you adieu, and thank you so much for being with us here on MSP this evening on the East Coast of the United States. I definitely wish you a ton of success. We will keep in touch, and I would like to see if we can get you to start taking crypto so we can get some of the community purchasing your products ASAP.
Thank you so much, JP. I really appreciate it.
You got it. I'm going to move you back into the audience now for the last couple of minutes, and we'll talk soon. You got it.
Thank you so much.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Sophia Avra of Avra, founder and creator of Avra products, CBD and THC, internal and external tinctures, ointments, balms, body butters, lubes, all kinds of awesome things. Ayurvedic medicine. She does women's health classes around the south coast of Massachusetts, Providence area. So if you're in that area, definitely get in touch. I will make sure to link all of her social media and her website in the after show post, which will be up on DTube tonight. So you've been listening to Hangin' with who? With yours truly, you know who, right here on MSPWaves.com each and every Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, and that's 10 p.m. UTC, although that's all going to change after daylight savings, that clusterfuck that's going to happen in the next few weeks. So we'll figure out the times and get it all straight. I'll be back here on Monday at 4. No, it won't be 4 p.m. because it is damn daylight savings time, so just wait for the post, and you'll get the right times. But I'm here on Monday afternoons on the East Coast with the flu shot, and so just make sure if you enjoyed what you heard tonight, that you check out her website. I'll give you the link one more time. And don't forget, she's offering a MSP discount, so you can enter the code in the website. It is the code is MSP Waves, one word, and it'll be a 10% discount on any of her products, any of the CBD products, because of course she can't sell the THC products mail order for the obvious reasons. So I want to thank you all for joining me this lovely, cool evening, and wish you a very pleasant and blessed weekend.